Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, if you're a business leader wanting to stay up to speed with the changing consumer demands and the emerging tech trends, where do you begin to work with mobile app development? Not to mention augmented reality and virtual reality. There's so much happening in this space now. And I recently discovered a company called Saritasa. And they're a company that simplifies the design, development and integration of complex technologies. And it also has a great story behind it too, because Nik Froehlich, CEO and founder of Saritasa, which is a full-service mobile web software, AR, VR and IoT development brand. And they've worked with Sony, Disney, BJ's, Burger Boss, Yamaha, and the list goes on and on. It's like a Rolodex of the world's biggest brands. And today, I've invited Nik onto the podcast to discuss the unique position of working with developers post-COVID, how the mobile and app development industry is evolving, as well as emerging tech trends that he's seeing, and especially when he's working with some of these household name brands. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to Florida, where Nik is waiting to speak with us. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Nik. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Sure. Well, thank you, Neil, first of all, for having me on your show. I'm the founder and CEO of Saritasa. That's a custom software consulting company based in the United States. I primarily drive the strategy and the vision of the company. And on a day-to-day basis, I lead the business development for the company. In other words, I run the whole sales team and marketing team.
And if I was to take you back before Saritasa, can I ask that you share your origin story and how you got here and where your passion for tech came from and what put you on the path you're on right now?
Certainly. That's really easy. I think it started my senior year. They introduced in high school. This is back in 84. Yeah, 84. And they started a new class called computer programming, and the school bought some Apple IIe's, right? Those are the first ones. And we were really lucky. I think the first month I finished the book, and it's just programming in BASIC. It wasn't that difficult. The instructor, that's his first time. So there were a couple of kids in there that just ran with it. And it was just a lot of fun. Create a program that says, print Nik is great, line 2, go to line 1. And it just... because you couldn't do that before. It was unheard of. So that's how my fascination started. I actually started my first company completely unrelated to tech in my beginning of my sophomore year in college in 1987. But I had purchased a Mac already. So the Macintosh came out and I was playing with it a lot, just loving it. But I started using that extensively in my company to help grow the company. For instance, you could buy a drag and drop databases. Yes, I wasn't a programmer really, but I used it. I used it in every facet of my business, and I was able to grow that business nationwide and really utilize it in a way that was unique. And I did that for about 20 years. But towards the end of that stretch, by about 2001, I found myself, I was helping other business owner friends or friends of friends that were business owners because they came to me and they wanted to modernize by helping them integrate various technologies in their companies. I'm talking more than just websites. I'm talking about maybe websites that do something, just a little bit, but that do something.
Yeah.
And I was doing that more and more, but I wasn't ever a developer, but I knew enough that I could speak to developers. So I had a freelancer that I would work with, and I would work with the owner of the company and try to marry those two, right, to get what we wanted out of it. And I discovered how big the disconnect was between non-technical business owners, such as myself, really. I just had a passion for tech, but I'm not technical, and the decision makers, and actual developers. Most developers are, a little bit more binary, and they're doing the code in a different type of, but I knew I could bridge the gap. It's like I could speak 2 languages because I was a businessman first. But I knew enough development talk that I could communicate what was wanted, what was needed. Because I saw all the time people saying, okay, I want something that does A, B, and C. And then the developer would do it. And then it'd come back and it said A, B, and C. But it didn't do it in a way that was useful to the person that requested it because there's so many nuances. So I sold my original company, which was, and then I started Saritasa with the vision and mission to help other people take full advantage of technology, just like I did. So that's how it started, and that's how we did it.
What a great story. And it also brought back a few memories. I must admit, in my younger years, much younger years, I'll date myself. And whenever I walked into an electrical store or a supermarket that had a Commodore 64 on display, I used to write 10 print, Neil is cool, and then 20 go to 10.
Yeah.
So the amount of stores that had Neil is cool scrolling down there back in the 80s, man. Simpler
But that
times.
was powerful. I mean, you have the same story as I do, right? And because that there was no other medium that you could do that except if you were in trouble and you'd have to go to the chalkboard and write, I will not do that again, or I will remain quiet in class 100 times, right? I don't think they do that anymore.
No. But it was that path, of course, that led you to Saritasa, which is a full-service mobile web software, AR, VR, and IoT development brand that has worked with some of the biggest brands in the world. And I'm hoping we're allowed to mention these, but the ones that when I was researching, I came across Sony, Disney, BJ's, Burger Boss, and Yamaha. But can you set the scene and tell the listeners about the kind of problems that you solve with tech and what makes you different from other solutions out there?
Well, the problem we solve is the struggle to define these companies. They have a need or a problem, right? They're trying to solve. And what we do is we solve the struggle or determine the right technology options to solve that problem, be it a short-term, like on budget, very small budget, or something that's disposable, or something that's long-term and has to be scalable, or something that's robust enough for commercial use. Because there's no single way to utilize a technology. There's many underlying ways, architectures, code, frameworks. There's no single way, but there's always a right way and a wrong way. Even using different technologies, there's still a right way and a wrong way. So I think the problem we try to solve is the companies just have the problem and they need a solution. So what we do is we drill down and really try to understand the best way to do it. Because most of our clients are not technical. So they depend heavily on their tech providers' recommendations and skills. But because they're non-technical, it's nearly impossible for them to evaluate, like, are these people good? Is this really the best solution? Or are they just telling me it because it solves my problem, but they can do it cheaper than the other one? Why are my quotes like, some quotes are twice as much? And they don't have the ability, because they're not technical, to know the underlying quality. So, and that makes it difficult. So over time, the best indicator of a trusted and quality tech provider is their portfolio of projects and the client satisfaction and the quality of client, right? So if somebody can show and demonstrate a large portfolio and lots of client referrals and, who your clients are, bigger clients are more discerning. So, and the reason I think we're different, because we didn't enter this space. We didn't get into the business as a group of developers trying to bring their services to market, because that's most of the other tech providers are that. They started as developers and they grew. But we formed as a non-tech approach with the goal and mission of bringing developers to businesses. So I think that nuanced difference, I think it makes a big difference in the little things. And I think that's kind of make us different than the others.
And I'm curious, as someone that is working with some of the biggest brands and names in the world, are there any trends that you're seeing in working with those brands that they're all having the same kind of problems with? Yeah.
So the bigger companies have always utilized technology to run their businesses through enterprise ERP systems and accounting systems. And they've been doing that a long time. So what we have found is that they are now starting to focus on some of the more one-off innovative solutions. Like it started with the mobile when the iPhone came out. And then shortly after that, Apple introduced the software development kit that anybody could build an app. Well, it took businesses a little time to, how are we going to use this? But today, I mean, they know that they need a mobile app, right? And that's happening with VR now too. We get a lot of requests for VR. So I see the trend is they're understanding that the technology is more than just running the business. It also defines who they are in the marketplace, what their offerings are. It's either how they're viewed by their market, by their customers, or even internally, the like virtual reality. There's a lot of them that are coming to us and asking for apps for internal training. So I do see a trend. I see that these big companies are, and they even do it by department. So what's so interesting, software used to be run by the single IT department.
Yeah.
And that was all encompassing. Well, we do a lot of work for business units, all the way down to this little team here that has a little marketing budget, and they'll build a mobile app just for their department. And it's not even tied back to IT at all and doesn't require their integration or anything. So I think that has opened up a lot so that they're doing a lot more work.
And I appreciate you're probably unable to name any particular brands, but do you have any anecdotes from working with some of those larger tech and consumer brands across the world? And is there anything that you've learned from that helps drive your business?
Yeah. I can't name this one, but it's a large international company with its headquarters in the US. And they have part of their model, their distribution models, they had independently owned, or they partnered, so 50-50 in regions for their distribution and maintenance. And this was big, heavy equipment stuff. And the local CEO of this distribution for the West Coast, he came to us and he said, I got to do something here because we're still using spreadsheets. And what they do is, so there's the quoting, and then there's the purchasing, and then there's the assembly and delivery and whatever. And they'd have these spreadsheets, and he showed me. It was really funny. And this is only 4 years ago. So there'd be a name of the people in each department as tabs down there. And they'd email this spreadsheet. They didn't even use Google Drive. They could have collaborated. They emailed the spreadsheet. And as somebody's done, they would take a row and they would cut it and then paste it on the tab of the next person and then pass that around. And then he said, and then these spreadsheets every day, and it takes me about 2 weeks or longer to get the kind of analytics I know to see if we make money on this one or not. So he came to us and he said, I wanted a top to bottom web app that does everything we do. And he figured the ROI out. He said, look, if we could just be 1% more efficient or be able to handle 1% more without hiring people, it totally makes the money. So we worked together and we did that. And we built it. It was very good. And here comes the funny part about the big part. So eventually the National they exercised the right to buy his franchise or his franchise. And then they saw what he built and they're all like, well, we're going to go to Salesforce. We've been working on this and it's several $1 million. And everybody locally was saying, oh, we like this so much. So they ran several Six Sigmas. And every single time the result was, well, let's use this software that Saritasa ran. But anyway, at the end, the big company won and they shut it down and they spending millions and millions on Salesforce. But anyway, that's with the big and some of the small. But what we have learned is that they really lean on us to help define a product. In other words, they come to us and they tend to want it all. Like, okay, we got this idea and we talked about it. And they've created this very complex thing. And we have learned to push back pretty hard to advise them that to start small, let's just tear off a piece. You'll be more happy. This enables them to get approvals internally easy, and they can have something tangible much more quickly. And we help try to explain to them that it never ends. You can keep building on to it. It's not like building a house or a hotel where you got to define the whole thing. You really can start with just a little bit. So that's, I think, what we've learned.
Also love that. And also, I'm curious what the developer world is, or what you feel, or how you feel the developer world is so intriguing at the moment. And what is the difference of the role of, let's say, a VR developer and a traditional developer for anyone that's outside of that space as well? Sure.
So, well, the developer world is intriguing right now. And when I say that, I guess we're talking about the developers. And I'll tell you, it's because demand is high and supply is low, especially for real talent. There's a wide range of talents from entry level to senior. And I mean, it's a difference between a person that can do an oil change on a car and a few things and the engineer that built the car and can really figure out what's going on. So the demand is high and supply is low. So you can imagine what's happened with costs for talented developers is high, no matter where they're located. It used to be you could go overseas, like you go to India or something, and you could get very inexpensive developers, and US developers were very expensive. Well, that gap is really coming down quickly. And because developers can be located anywhere in the world now. And this is really part of COVID, and the business community is becoming much more accepting of this. It used to be a different model. You would hire an agency overseas, and you would hire sitting in a room. But now you can have teams in many different locations working together on projects, and you can actually pick out the best talent. And maybe one is in Argentina, one is in Arizona, US, one is in London. And the tools to work together, to collaborate, it makes it so easy. So yeah, that's why it's so intriguing at the moment, because there's a lot of shifting going on the models to provide the talents. So the role of a VR developer versus a traditional developer is a great question. So a traditional developer implements precise functionality and typically is defined by a user story. And that's the way somebody's not into development. A user story is a description of kind of what the flow is, what's going to happen. Like a person goes on and hits create an account, and they will see 3 fields: a first name, a second name, a third name. And if they don't fill it out, we're going to put a reminder. So it kind of walks them through. That's a user story. And it has an exact outcome. So a developer will have that information, and then they do the code, and then they can look at it and they can test it, and it gets a green light or a red light, and anybody else can test it. So it's very objective. Virtual reality is much like making a movie, or let's say a television commercial, right? So here's the criteria. We want to show a car driving through the mountains, and we want it to be, I don't know, want it driving through the mountains and then somebody getting out and saying, I love this car, right? Okay, yeah. That's what we want. Now, what is the end result going to look like? Because do we have a movie star? Well, that's the budget. Is it a helicopter doing that? I mean, there's a lot of things that really can't be defined. And then, even if you get closer and you discuss those things, the VR person, the developer, has to use code and stuff to try to recreate it in a virtual way. So there is no objective testing, right? So there's more skills involved, and there's more creativity involved. And there is no exact outcome. It's all subjective. So it's quite a bit different.
And I'm curious, from your unique position of working with developers in a post-COVID world, have you seen the mobile and app development industry change? Are there any significant changes there that you've noticed?
Well, I think I kind of mentioned already, the costs are rising. Yeah. And the model of having everyone in the same office has changed, and that people can work anywhere, and the clients don't seem to mind. So I think that has been the most significant change in the industry.
And what are the most exciting things, do you think, for anyone listening, to keep in mind when building an app? Because everybody wants an app now. Every business is chasing it. But what questions should tech companies be asking themselves before taking the big jump and begin the process of developing an app? Is there anything that you can advise? Because I suspect you've seen a lot make the same mistakes again and again, right?
Oh, yeah. Sure. Well, what's the most exciting thing to keep in mind? Well, I think go back to the same story you and I had. You could do anything on that black screen. You happened to write, "Hi, Neil," and I said, "Nick is great," right? Wow. But so that's the point. You can do anything. It's a blank piece of paper. So you can improve your business processes, right? So you can make your company more efficient. So you could do, or more scalable. So you could do more work with the same amount of people, or you could make the work that they do easier. You can, if you have a quality control problem, you can create apps that will resolve that. You can differentiate yourself in the marketplace with your clients. I mean, if you don't have an app today, if you're a bigger name brand company and you don't have an app yet, I mean, you should. Everybody does. But even for mid-sized companies, you can differentiate yourself. And if you're creative and use any kind of innovation, you can maybe even leapfrog a competitor, right? And that's what a lot of people are looking at VR for, is like, how do we use this now to attract new business? So in many ways, you can transform your company. I mean, if you see your company heading down, a road of declining sales or whatever, you could think again and maybe use technology or an app of some kind to resurrect that. But here's the biggest mistake everybody does. Most of the companies do their homework to calculate the initial ROI, return of investment. So we're going to spend $200,000 for this app, but we think we're going to get that money, or it's worth it for marketing. But they forget the ongoing maintenance costs, because grow old the moment they're finished. The moment they're finished, they grow old. Yeah. It's just like a car maintenance or anything else. If you don't maintain your car and you just let it go, eventually you're going to bring it into the garage and it's going to be very broke. It'll be down for a while. Maybe you'll have to replace the engine completely. Apps are the same way, because the underlying software, the frameworks that it's built on, are being updated constantly. And if you don't keep up with that, there are going to be all kinds of problems down the line. So any kind of app, a web app, it depends how big it is. If it's big and very important to part of the company, that ongoing maintenance cost, that annual cost, needs to be calculated into the overall ROI. And most people just think you build it and it'll work forever until I want to make a change.
And as you said, that many different operating system updates throughout the year. Anyone that's picked up their phone and seen how many times they've received those updates, and that needs to be stayed on top of, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It does. And then if you have an iPhone and you have an Android, okay, now you just doubled it. But within that, there's API. Most apps don't stand alone. They communicate to the outside, some kind of database somewhere, and does something. So all those APIs, normally third-party stuff, those are getting updated all the time too. And if you're using, let's say, like AR, augmented reality, well, that's another framework. Some apps contain a lot of those things. And then if iOS and Android update, then all those other ones are going to have to update, or they may be incompatible. So there's a lot. And people don't understand that, because that's the tech part. It's like, why is this happening? Well, yeah. So, yeah, think about the ongoing costs.
And what about yourselves at Saritasa? Is there anything you can share about your big focus at the moment and what's next for you?
Sure. Well, what's up for me? We've built a really great team with people that have been there from us, some of them from the very beginning, so 15 years, and many that have been with us for more than 10 years and 7 and 10 years. And we've built some great leadership, all of the leadership intend to make this their career, which I find great. I mean, I'm fortunate, I think, because in the dev industry, a lot of people jump around. So my personal plan is to continue doing this until my leadership team becomes better than I am at it, and I become the anchor. Then I'll let them run it.
Oh, absolutely love that. And we began the podcast talking about your origin story and how you got where you are. And we've almost come full circle now. So I always like to ask my guests if there's a song that's inspired them, helped them in their career, or a book that has inspired them, anything at all. What would your choice be? And is there a reason behind it, a story behind it? And we'll leave everyone listening with a bit of inspiration.
Okay. Well, I'm a big fan of Jordan Peterson, and there's a song called Make It Beautiful by Kira the Dawn and Jordan Peterson. It inspires me when I listen to it. I don't have anything in the past that helped my career or anything, but this gets into my head, and it's just makes me feel positive about life. And personally, my responsibility in each piece of life to make it beautiful, and then the rest becomes beautiful. So I enjoy that song.
What a great choice. I'll add that to our Spotify playlist. And for anyone listening that just wants to find out more information about Saritasa and anything that we've talked about today, or contact your team, what's the best starting point?
Well, I think the easiest way to do it is just go to our website, which is www.saritasa.com. And to spell that, it's not easy to spell. It's SARITASA.com. And if there's a little anecdote about that, when I first started the company in 2005, I was looking for a domain name, and I wanted something short, and I just couldn't think of anything. Oh, and the name of a company, right? So I just said, forget it. I'm just going to create a name. So I took the first 2 letters of my 4 children, Sabrina, Ari, Tabitha, and Salem, and combined them, and that's what Saritasa is.
Oh, man, what a great story and perfect moment to end on. Well, and I've loved chatting with you today, yes, about some of those big brands that you're working with all around the world and how you grew that company to over 20 branches in 9 states across the country. It's phenomenal what you've achieved. But thank you so much for sharing your story and how you got into tech in a unique way. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil.
What a great guy. And I cannot thank Nik enough for coming on and sharing the story behind how he created the company, how he's built it throughout the years, and how he's helping businesses in this digital age make huge leaps in mobile app and augmented reality, virtual reality, and helping them make waves in those worlds by simplifying the design, development, and integration of all these complex technologies. But over to you. I'd love to hear how you're navigating through this digital era and share your lessons learned along the way. So please email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. My website is techblogwriter.co.uk. You can get me on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram at Neil C. Hughes. But that's it for today. I'll return again bright and early tomorrow. But a big thank you for listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.